Hi, everyone. Matt Jacobowski here with the next edition of My Side of the Fence. Excited to have my good friend Skeeter Heritage join us today. Hey, Skeeter.
Good morning, Matt.
So, Skeeter is the president of Heritage's Dairy Stores, which many of you South Jersey natives are well aware of. But we're going to get to know Skeeter personally today and his story and some things that drive him. And the tradition of our show, Skeeter, is to start with kind of a rapid fire, some quick questions to get to know you. So you ready?
Go.
Favorite Netflix series?
The psychological thriller Coco Melon.
Beautiful. Favorite sport?
College football.
Favorite food?
Man, either a ribeye steak or pasta.
It's a tough question because you're down all those LBs, so you don't want to think about those things.
Yeah, I squeezed into this Under Armour shirt I got for Father's Day last year, man.
Perfect. And do you have a guilty pleasure?
Ice cream, man. Ice cream doesn't make it in our household.
Yeah, I have to steer clear of Heritage's ice cream myself. Uh,
The
so
kids think they're gonna the kids think they're gonna wake up and eat ice cream for breakfast, but little do they know Dad hit it up at like 11:30 at night.
which means you have to go get more in the morning.
That's it.
So, Skeeter, a lot of folks, like I said, know about Heritages and they know your stores and they know it's a good spot to stop for a great deli sandwich or lunch, breakfast, or dinner or something convenient for the house. But I don't think many people know the real Heritages story, where you guys started and where you've been and what you've become. So, would you mind giving us a little bit of insight into the story of Heritages?
Yeah, sure. So my great grandfather Harold Harrison Heritage, or we call him Grandpop Skeets in our history. Um, they had a farm here on Jessup Road in West Stefford, and they were farmers, and it evolved into the dairy business where he started out with one cow and bottled milk, and then the business grew, and then out of that morphed the home delivery dairy business where they'd have the insulated boxes on the front doorstep and the
Mhm.
milkman would deliver to your house. And at the time, like South Jersey was growing. Like I hear stories of when Oak Valley was, fast forward when Oak Valley was being built and all those neighborhoods. So like you'd have a neighborhood milkman that would service the neighborhood. So that's how Heritage's Dairy, and we still retain the name Heritage's Dairy Stores. My grandfather Skeets, he had a brother Wendy as well, and so Wendy primarily oversaw the milk dairy, and they were both involved. And my grandpa Skeets, he thought it'd be a good idea to build brick and mortar stores. Like, hey, we could sell stuff out of buildings. And in 1957, they built their first store in Westville Grove, right off of Delsey Drive, store number one. And that's where the dairy stores were birthed. And then over time, it's funny to hear old school stories of how it has progressed, and some things have changed. A lot of things have changed, but many have not. But we didn't have coffee at one point, and the progression of growing the deli business, and still have our milk and eggs, and we have excellent ice cream and all those things. So we still retain our dairy roots, but we've really become much more than that over time. And then
Yeah.
outside of that, my dad took over in the late, I guess it was the late 80s, maybe. I don't know, late 80s or so. So my grandpa, my dad took over for him. And my dad oversaw, by the time we had 20, maybe 20, mid 20 stores. And so my dad was successful in expanding beyond that, right? So right now we have 33 stores. So my dad oversaw like the building and the expansion during that time. And basically my dad, besides that, his major contribution was making sure that people remain the most important part of our business, whether it was the people that walk through the doors that we serve or our employees. And so just 2 years ago my dad retired, and now I'm at the helm. I have a huge, the weight and responsibility and the of all that to perpetuate what we have going on here.
Yeah, it's a great story, and a lot of the things your family believed in is still lived and breathed today, which is cool. Um, And Skeeter, obviously, family is important to you. Knowing you personally and your children, and the fact that you've committed your career to basically being with your family. Um, but talk about what it was like to grow up in a growing and well-known family business. Well, I think a lot of people would think that was easy, or that you kind of always knew what your future held. But what was it really like?
Well, so there was it was more complicated than you could imagine, right? So, and I had both my mom and my dad, and they were excellent parents, but my parents, they got divorced. I don't know, I was 4 or 5 years old. So I had that whole dynamic growing up where I primarily lived with my mom, and my dad had his thing going on, and there was visitations and stuff like that. So there was like, I want to say like two different worlds going on, growing up. And my mom was awesome. She, made sure that education was important to her, that we did well in school. Youth sports were a huge part of me growing up. Uh, I play three sports, fall, winter, summer, all those things. So that was a huge part of me growing up, was youth sports, and my dad was there. We would visit, and we had awesome vacations with him. We'd go down to the Chesapeake Bay. So many fond memories of just spending time with my dad. He was ultra supportive of the sports. I don't think he missed a football game, man. Like, seriously, that was like his commitment. He was always there. And if you know my dad, you could look back in a crowd of, like, I don't know, hundreds of people, and pick him out in an instant. Like, there he is. There's that guy. So that was kind of my experience growing up as a child. And as it relates to the dairy stores, it was just something that was like going on. Like, my dad, he had this business. It was a family business. And as it related to the business, like, we used to have our company picnics here at the farm. We had like a pool house, and there's the property with the barn and all that. And so many fond memories of attending the company picnics, and just the nice people, many of which still work here. And then what really was just like a family atmosphere, and it was cool. But then also, memories of, we'd go down to Maryland with my dad, and back in the day they had those, like, it was like a briefcase cell phone. You remember those things?
Yeah,
Like, it was
yeah.
like before. So, like, it'd be Friday night, we'd be going down on his boat, and he was making calls to the staff stores, and handling problems. So, that was a little bit of insight on the business and the things that he went through, and the struggle and the growth that had would take place.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah, it certainly did. And what's interesting is now obviously you have children of your own, right? That are
Yeah.
growing up, getting involved in sports and school, and starting to be aware of who their dad is and what the family does. So, as you look to the future for that, what do you see that maybe you'll do different for your children, or you'll model after what your dad did and your mom did with you? What do you see changing?
So a couple things, right? Like, again, not a knock on my parents, but I think there's a huge advantage that, like, I have a great relationship with my wife, and to, raise children with a mom and a dad in the home has great advantages. I mean, there was a lot of heartache and pain, and things going on when I was a kid, as it related to that. Like, there's no other way to put it, but divorce reaps carnage, man. So, like, I
Yeah.
think that's one thing. Second thing would be, we always grew up like just going to church and all that stuff. Like, it was like the right thing to do, but there was not like real belief there, right? So, like, now I can actually live out my faith as a model for my children. Like, we can live and walk by faith. And my greatest hope is, if I can pass anything down to them, it would be that.
Yeah.
And then probably my third thing would just be, just to be present and supportive in what they have going on. I really do I enjoy my children, but I also take it very serious that I have a finite period of time to impact their lives. Like, I blinked. I got my little girl's turning 10 next week, so our firstborn. And I mean, she's going to be out of the house in 8 years. And wow, I have 8 years. but I really take it serious that I have 8 years to impact her life, to mold, how she thinks and her attitudes and her worldview, and to give her, the tools necessary to be a productive, functioning person in this world, and to be successful. So that's and my parents did that for me. So I wouldn't say that's doing something differently, but that's where my mind is, and I think they're the advantages that I have in raising my kids. I have perspective. My perspective I think will enable me to do a good job. Even though it's that being a dad, like running this business, man, is like Kate compared to being a dad.
Right, right. What has always impressed me about your family and the way, you guys have grown your business into a larger organization, but all of it traces back to certain values around people and the way you treat them. And I think that ties into your faith, into your family, into other relationships you have. Um, do you ever remember when you were growing up a time where you felt pressure, or you felt like, oh, my future is doing what my dad does? Or did it kind of happen organically?
I would say it happened organically. Um, but like growing up, I really didn't think much. Like this is where I found myself, right? I found myself, I lived in like a delusion till like the end of high school, basically. I thought you would you went to school to like fraternize with your friends and to play sports. Like that's basically why I thought, and it was the greatest thing ever, right? Like
Right.
that's why you went to school. It wasn't like to get educated. So I found myself, I don't know, it was like the second half of my senior year, and I was like, man, what am I doing? Like I didn't apply to any colleges or anything
Right.
like that. So I had applied to Rowan and Rutgers, and I only got into Rutgers Camden, which, it's a decent school. So like that was like, oh, I guess I'll go to college. So that's what I did. I started going to college, held various jobs like within the community, but ultimately started working in the stores my second year in college. With that being said, I was kind of a flunky. It took me 7 years to get my degree by for various reasons, but by like year, I'll say 5, I was like, man, I just need to like start a career. So that summer I started our manager training program, and started managing a store. And then the summer was over, and I just went into full-time management here at Heritage's. In the interim, I would take interim courses like winter, summer. So I ended up finishing up my degree, but like my career at Heritage's then like officially started as a store manager, going through it. And then once I like, got into that, I vividly remember a conversation being in my dad's office. So I was probably in my early 20s of thinking, and it was never spoken like, oh, you're going to take over the company or anything like that. My dad would always just tell me, he said, son, like you're not going to be given anything. He said, what I can provide you, or what I'm willing to give you, is an opportunity, right? Like, and I knew that, so I had to work hard and acquire the skills, knowledge, and all of those things ultimately to get me there. But I remember feeling so overwhelmed of, being privy to what my dad did and the problems we had, and just I'm in this manager level, and I was overwhelmed. I remember crying in his office in my early 20s, like, how am I ever going to get there? Like, I can't do this, and all that stuff. And my dad was really wise, man. Like time and hard work and experience, it prepares you for what lies ahead.
Yeah.
And that was my path, man. I managed for 5 years. I was district supervisor for 5 years. I had a little interim office job here for 2 years in between that, and then I was the operations manager for 5 years. So I just basically up to that point covered like half my life,
Yeah.
But the things that I learned, the mindset, the philosophies that I had grown or developed over that time are invaluable for what I'm doing today.
Yeah. And it's cool that you earned it, right? A lot of people may just think, oh, well, he could have done whatever he wanted in life and be in the seat that you're in now, but that's not the case. And knowing your dad, right? I would say your dad's one of the biggest personalities I've ever met in my life, and I've met a lot of people. But what I always learned from him, and you live and breathe it too, and so do your siblings that I know, is he would truly run through a brick wall for people that he cares about. He is one of the most loyal people to everyone and anyone. He doesn't care about their background. He doesn't care what they think or believe in. He just knows if they're good people, he'll do anything for them. And I think that's why your company continues to be successful year in and year out, even in this crazy world and crazy climate.
No doubt. We were just talking about him in the reception areas. Everybody's getting their coffee this morning. Like there's only one. I call him Big Daddy. There's only one Big Daddy, and he has the biggest heart that I know, and he passed that on to us.
For
You
sure,
know,
for sure.
yeah,
So part of this show, Skeeter, I have like a couple traditional questions because the purpose is I want people to realize that even though you have a big title next to your name, you're just a normal person like the rest of us. But part of your role as president of a company is making decisions, right? Who are we
yeah.
going to do business with? Who are we not going to do business with? How do you make those decisions on the relationships that you guys make out in the community, both personally and from a business standpoint?
And so I would say first off, you already mentioned that we're really are loyal. We're a loyal company, and so I haven't had to make many of those decisions. I'll preface by saying that. Um, I will also say that I'd be looking for anybody. I don't need anybody, or I don't want anybody to be selling me anything, right? Like I don't. I want to, just like you and I have a good working relationship. Like that's, to me, that's what it's about, is the relationship. I also don't want I don't know, you can tell when people are fake. You
Yeah,
really can. The sincerity or genuineness of someone, and or they're just a big BSer, that comes off. So it's a turn off if somebody's stroking you or they're trying to sell you something. I don't particularly care for that either. I'm also really akin to, or I'm aware of, the grass isn't always greener on the other side, right? Like people can promise you the world, but it comes down to, like, can they deliver that for you? And our expectations of people, I believe, are reasonable with anyone we do business with. Like we're pretty forgiving, but you need to do the basics right. And we've had instances where vendors have mistreated us. Believe it or not, even in South Jersey, we have 33 stores, but there's major corporations out there that they think we're just a small guy and we really don't matter. And if that's really how they, if that's what they think, it will show in the way they treat us, right? And there's
right.
multiple big vendors that we chose not to do business with for a time, and there's still a major snack company that had perpetually treated us like garbage, and they haven't been in our stores for years. So that's kind of it, man. It's about the relationship for me to sum it all up, Matt.
Yeah, it goes back to what you started with. It's about the people.
Yeah,
Um, so last question, a
yeah,
little morbid, but if you had to write your own eulogy, how would you want to be remembered?
man. Yeah, I've thought about, I think about that stuff all the time. I was actually, I before we jumped on, I told you I was going to Mexico, and I only half jokingly told my leadership team yesterday. We had a meeting, and I said, I'm going to give you a list of guys, that you'll give a call if I get tied up by MS-13 or the Los Zetas or whoever. Right? Like give these guys a call. And I said I know that. So it's just something that's in my mind. But in thinking about me personally, again, I've alluded to this already. I think the only lasting thing that I will leave behind, and it won't be my legacy here at Heritage's or what this company has grown into, or professional successes, but it really will be like two things. It'll be the way that I've like treated people, love people, and then ultimately my faith, right? Like the faith part is the only enduring thing that will last. The Bible says that heaven and earth will pass away, right? But my word will endure forever. And I truly believe that. So the enduring thing that I would want people to remember me by is that I had faith in Jesus Christ, and that when I go, I'm in his presence, and that there'll be a day when it says that my corruption, my mortal body that is going to bleed and die and rot and decay, will rise again unto eternal life. So that's my eulogy, man. I don't know how you put that on a headstone.
We'll get you a big one.
Yeah.
Well,
Etch that thing on the back of it. But I do. My favorite thing is to go. I like to jog. I'm a fat guy that likes to run. Yeah, I'll trot it out. But my favorite place to go is in the Eglinton Cemetery over there in Clarksboro. As I run through there, I just think like the reality of my faith is that one day that place is going to explode and there's going to be bodies coming up out of the grave and we're going to live forever, man. And it's only due to what Jesus did for you and I, man. And I find great comfort and hope in that message, no matter what falls us here on this side.
yeah. And I hate to keep tying it back to the same theme, but relationships, and without a strong relationship with Christ, it's tough to have strong relationships with others out in this mortal world. So it's very important.
Dude, you see that all the problems that we have out there, like people have programs and they think that we need people to legislate policy and stuff like that. And like he's the only one that can really change someone's heart. And I mean, we don't have time in this broadcast to go through who I was before I really came to faith at the age of 30. But I wasn't a good person, man. I'm still not a good person in all reality. But I'm better than I was, right?
Right.
And I was reading last night with my daughter. She has to do a book report, and it's C.S. Lewis's series, The Chronicles of Narnia. But it was the last battle, and in the last battle, they entered the real Narnia, which is a picture of heaven. And the cool thing was that one of the characters, Tyrion, he was the king at the time when the world ended. That he was reunited with his family, and I got to tell my daughter that. So like for all those that believe we're going to have relationships that were a little bit longer than eternity, right?
Right.
Like I knew you before eternity. I had my family around me. So like when we're there's going to be all these new people and it's going to be awesome, but we'll have known people a little bit longer
Yeah.
than eternity, which is pretty wild to think about.
It is. It is. Well, Skeeter, this was a great use of time. It was very special. Thanks for setting it aside for us, and we appreciate you giving us a little sneak peek on your side of the fence.
Thanks, Matt. It was I didn't know what to expect, but it was a blessing, man.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Skeeter.
Yep. Thanks, Matt.